Well, welcome back to another episode of the Overcame podcast. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. My name is Simon Osimo, and you can join me for weekly conversations every Thursday with some really interesting people who are going to share their personal stories, transformations, and experiences that help educate, inform, and inspire. Now, today I'm joined by Dr. Samuel Ekundayo, who is a Nigerian now living in New Zealand. University lecturer, life coach, purpose preacher, very powerful and spiritual man. And actually, I first became aware of Dr. Samuel when I saw one of his posts on LinkedIn that went viral. I think now it's just short of a million views, where he spoke about the power of consistency. And I've personally gone on to watch that video probably over 100 times. Now, every week for the last 2 years, he's released a series in what he calls Motor Vitality, where he shares a very short inspirational video. But he's had a lot of transformation in his own life that aged just 23 when studying for his doctorate, the college that he was at in New Zealand actually kicked him out of the program and said, he wasn't good enough. So this is going to be a two-part conversation with Dr. Samuel, where we're going to hear about his transformation, hear a lot about his motor vitality, and just he's going to share his life lessons about what it means to live with purpose. So before we dive into the content, I just want to remind you that you can listen to this podcast wherever you consume your content, and the video can be watched on our YouTube channel at Simon Osimo. So lastly, if you get something from this conversation or believe that others will, it'd mean the world to me if you would like and share it with your circle of influence. Okay, so let's dive into this week's conversation with Dr. Samuel Ekundayo.
Welcome to the Who I Became podcast.
Well, Dr. Samuel Ekundayo, welcome to the Who I Became podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Simon. It's a joy to be here and a privilege too. Thank you.
And it's a funny story. I mentioned to my son earlier that my next guest is going to be in New Zealand, and you're 17 hours ahead of me. And my son responded with, "Dad, is he from the future?" And I said, "Well, he's
right.
But,
he's right.
Yeah, it is. 17 hours. It's like, can you tell me what happened in news?" Yeah, so I mean,
I can tell you what Friday looks like.
It is. I know you're a father of two young boys as well, like me. So I mean, kids do say the funniest things, So it is good. But yeah, and I mean, and I'll just touch a little bit about who you are and how I actually sort of got into this conversation, because I know that you're a lecturer at a university in New Zealand. You're a life coach. You're a preacher, motivational speaker. You achieved something which is one of my life goals, is to get a Ph.D, is to get a doctorate, where you started yours when you were 23 years old. So we're definitely going to dive into some of that. You're a native of Nigeria, but now live in New Zealand. And really, Dr. Samuel, I first saw you when I saw one of your posts on LinkedIn that went viral, and I was like, who is this guy? This is amazing. The passion, the enthusiasm. No, I loved it, and that was called The Power of Consistency.
Yes.
And you're also the author of several books, and I think your recent book you've just literally released is called The World Needs You. But most of your time, Dr. Samuel, is spent around the power of purpose.
Absolutely.
And so maybe just tell us a little bit about sort of what you do now, your sort of motivational speaking and your life coaching. How does that work for you?
Like you've said, I'm a full-time senior lecturer. I teach here in one of the institutions here in New Zealand. But most importantly, my life's purpose is to help other people discover their purpose. And that's what I spend most of my time doing, in fact, literally every single day. I'm adding value to people's lives with respect to their purpose and with respect to them maximizing their potentials. So literally, that's what I feel is the mandate on my life, to actually help other people. That's where I find fulfillment. That's where I find significance. That's where my influence lie. And I do that through my writing, through my speaking, through my coaching. I've got coaching clients all over the world, and I speak on various stages all over the world, from religious stages to the corporate organizations and so on and so forth, majorly on the subject of purpose and everything else around it. That is.
Yeah, and actually, I left something off that as you were just talking, man. A random thought came into my head, but you've also done a TEDx speak as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I have. I have.
there's not much this guy hasn't done. I think my brain was drifting off thinking, but the power of so tell us about the power of consistency, man, because that's when I saw you
Mm.
on LinkedIn. And just one day, I don't even know why you popped up in my news feed, but I was like, who is this random Nigerian guy talking about power of consistency? And I listened for it's like a 4 or 5 minute video, and definitely for my listeners, go out and listen to the video. But I was hooked, and I went back to your YouTube channel and listened to most of your motivational
Thoughts.
speeches that you have
Mm.
on there.
Yeah.
And so, how did that
Mhm.
come about then to get the sort of the power of consistency? Why did that one take off? And just tell us a bit about that short video.
That video is very powerful because it's one of my secrets. Is one of the and I did a three part series of the power of consistency on my YouTube page. It's literally one of the major things that has helped me because I've come to realize that success is not a one-off thing. Success has to become a habit. It has to be something you do over and over again for you to actually be successful at it. In fact, unless something becomes something you do over and over again, there's a likelihood people won't reckon that thing with you. And when I believe I got the mandate to actually start fulfilling purpose and helping other people discover their purpose, one of the key things that struck out to me was the idea to start doing a video and to do it weekly. This was very strange. At the time, I had no idea how I was going to sustain doing videos weekly. And this was I got the idea 2016 to be precise. So I'd released 2 videos, to start with, and just randomly just testing things out and seeing how, they were quite good. And then I made up my mind, okay, I'm going to name it Motivitality, which is a combination of motivation and vitality. And I will do it weekly, and I will release it every Monday nights, come what may, all over the world, of course, on social media. And guess what? Since 30th of January 2017 up until now, I have not failed to release a video weekly on Motivitality. And I can't even tell you enough the benefits and the beauty of doing that weekly. It's just amazing because, like I shared in many of my on those 3-part series, it has a lot of benefits when you're consistent. Number one, it establishes your reputation. People just believe that you have a reputation if you're consistent. If you're always doing that thing over and over again, they believe that you have credibility.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
true.
And then it's also the foundation of excellence because you're going to make mistakes over and over again, but the more you keep doing it, the better you're going to get at it. So there is this belief that you like many of the people who signed up for my coaching would go back to my videos. So some of them maybe have the similar idea, but they don't know where to get started and how to get started. And they will go back to my old videos and they will watch how I've grown. They will see how I've grown and they go like, if this guy has done it like this, okay, if I sign up for his coaching, I would not take as long as it did to get there. I would, I'll be able to learn a lot from him. So it's really, really massively helped me. And I shared in one of the videos how for the first time in my life in 2018, I flew business class for the first time. It came out of consistency. Someone who's been watching my videos consistently for a whole year, never made a comment, never liked the post. One day just sent me a random message and said, "Hey, man, are you keen to come speak in Australia?" And the next thing was, he was even apologizing to me. He said he really actually wanted to fly me first class, but there was no first class ticket available that day. And he would do a business class. And that would never have happened if I was not consistent with my craft, because, of course, there will be no reputation for that. But because I was, there is a reputation that seems to have come out of being consistent, and people believe in that reputation. Very powerful.
Yeah, and it's interesting, even for me watching your stuff, I tend to go to the same videos over and over again, so I have consistency in what actually watching your videos as well. I consistently watch the video on consistency, so I don't know what that means for me, but maybe there's a psychologist watching it.
It means
They'll
you're
figure it out.
consistent. It just means you're consistent.
Yeah, it does. Well, and it's interesting because, one of the things when you have, I think I've also heard the term that, you're a purpose preacher, and I myself have had a lot of adversity in my life that you sort of have to rise above. I know when me and you spoke a few weeks ago, and did a sort of some pre-conversation before recording this podcast. I think both of us are people where we see the end goal. We don't see the obstacles that stand in our way. We see the end goal. But not everyone is like that. And I think it's key to sort of talk about your own life. But there was a lot of adversity and sacrifice to get where you are. And I just want to start a little bit about your father's life, perhaps, because you're now in New Zealand. You left Nigeria to get to Singapore, and there's a bit of a story as to how that happened. So, Dr. Sammy, maybe tell us a bit about how your family ended up in Singapore and then New Zealand.
So thank you for that. When I was age 14, I conceived this dream to be a professor. I mean, it was one of those dreams, like anyone that has a big dream, you have no idea how it was going to come to pass. You just conceive the idea, and if you have any idea what it would take to achieve that dream, you probably not say it out. You probably hold it in yourself. But I was just excited about the dream, and I would say it out to people. I'm going to be a professor. I'm going to be a young one at that. I'll be a young professor. I'll finish my Ph.D. very early, and all of that. I would just be saying it to people. No, sorry, I didn't even talk about Ph.D. because I didn't know I was going to do a Ph.D. then. And I was telling everyone I'll be professor this. And guess what? People that started calling me professor this, professor that at that particular point in time. But we were from a very humble background. Of course, my dad at a point had a break that worked quite well, but it didn't last for very long. And then things went downhill since then, really downhill, to the point that I remember we rented a house in Lagos. And my dad and I were the ones that actually built the soakaway. The soakaway is where the feces go from the toilet, right? and they go right into the ground. Literally, we built that. We built the well from which we drank water, literally. And it was a one-bedroom flat. Because I had 3 sisters, we had to find a way to build another room so that my sisters can sleep in one and then I can sleep in another. Life was that tough. But I remember at a point, my dad is a very resilient person, and it's someone I've learned a lot from. In fact, he's my hero. And one day he just wouldn't give up, and he would go to the cyber cafe. This were the days when the internet was still. I'm talking about 2005 here, 2004, 2005. So early stages of the internet. And my dad would go to the cyber cafe, and he would just browse the internet every day on, looking for opportunities outside of Nigeria. And one day, several days though, he would come back and he would say, "Oh, I found this country," and and he would tell us about it. They said, "Oh, we can do this." And then again, he would come back again. No, we can't go to that country. For example, there was a time he found Finland, and then he found Sweden. Wow. And then we can't go there because Nigerian passports are not allowed, and all of those things like that. And then one day he came back with so much excitement, like he would, like he's done a few times, and said, "I found Singapore. We will go to Singapore." And that was it. He never came back to say we're not going again. He never came back to tell us about any obstacle. So it looked quite registered, but of course we couldn't afford it. So I remember my mom taking lots and lots of advanced salaries where she was working, and a few other loans from friends and family for my dad to be able to travel. And then he traveled to Singapore in 2005. That was how my dad got to Singapore in 2005. And then in around 2006, he got a job with a church. Just cutting the long story short, got a job with a church, and he was doing very well in the church. And his boss called him one day in 2006 and said, "John, what is one thing you think we can do for you? One thing I think we can do for you." And my dad said, "I don't want a car. I don't want a house. Just bring my family. Bring the whole of my family." My goodness, that was the breakthrough for the entire family. And I was still in the higher institution then. I was still in my second year of higher institution, in Nigeria. And that was how we all moved away from Nigeria. The church paid for our flights. Literally, my dad didn't ask for a house, they gave us a house, and all of that. We got sorted. So that was how we moved to Singapore. That was how we got to Singapore. Of course, through tough times and all. And my dad had to pay all the loans back and so on and so forth.
Well,
And guess what?
I know you're going to
Yeah.
move on to New Zealand or somewhere, so I'm going to interrupt you and stop you because
Okay, sure.
There's something I want to get out of this story, which I found really significant, is that there was a time when your mother was ill, and I don't think you mentioned this, telling the story.
I forgot that part.
That's okay. That's what I'm here to remind you. Yeah.
I remember what led to the decision, for my dad to start to look for greener pastures was when my mom was pregnant, and she was pregnant with one of my sisters, and it was a very, very tough period for us, and that we had to go back to farming. And I'm not talking about the mechanized farming now. I'm talking about the kind of farming that you do to actually eat the next day. That kind of farming. That you're literally getting what you're getting from that farm to take home and eat. And I remember my mom was 9 months pregnant that particular year. And while we were on our way back from the farm, mom fell, and she fell face down. I mean, for a 9 months pregnant woman to fall face down, that's horrific. We were there in shock. But I remember my dad holding my mom in his hands, and he was literally crying. And it was a cry of desperation. It was a cry that came with a groaning, like, this is it. This is it. An end has got to come to this. And that was what led to my dad beginning to actually go to the cyber cafe every single time to seek a way out of Nigeria. It was like, I've had enough, and my family's had enough as well. And I think that was one of the things that really helped him to remember the family, even when he could have asked for all the luxuries of life, and think about if someone were to be given such blank checks, right? You can imagine what they would ask for. But asking for his family to be brought was just, was amazing. And that was literally what helped people like me, and my sisters, all of them today to be where we are today. Probably I won't be here. And if I am, it would have taken, if I am, it would have probably taken a longer route, to come here. So yeah, that was how that happened. So let me know if you want me to move to the New Zealand story now.
No, and I just wanted to get on to the sort of the feelings or emotions that you must have had. And the reason why I really want to dive into this is that most of us know that life comes with sacrifice. And you can't really compare yourself against others, or you shouldn't. Life is just hard for everyone. It's just their interpretation of what hard is. But really listening to your stories, that your mum was ill, your dad said, okay, enough, we're going to leave Nigeria, we've got to find a country that will take us. And your dad's sacrifice was that he had to go and leave his family for a year to a foreign land that he'd never been to Singapore, before you guys could come over. So I guess, how's that really impacted you now that you're a father, in seeing the sort of level of sacrifice that sometimes you have to make?
Massive. I made a statement the other time. I talked about how my dad been how my dad is my hero. I learned so much from him. I learned resilience. I learned persistence. I learned being purposeful. I learned I learned that sacrifice, that attitude of not giving up, that intestinal fortitude, to carry through no matter what you're going through. I learned so much from him, and I'm still learning, just seeing the sacrifice that he had to put in, for our future. I remember him saying a lot of times, he would say to us, I'm doing this for you guys. Like literally, and he was right, because at a point he left and went back to Nigeria. He literally went back to Nigeria. So it was very clear that he was not like he was doing it for himself. He literally would absolutely, he loves living in Nigeria, and he's still in Nigeria at the moment as we speak. He moved back, but that move settled us, settled someone like me, settled my sister who now lives in the UK. But seeing all of that has really helped me as a father of two boys now as well, to realize that I must give everything and give all it takes for them to also enter into their destiny, into their purpose, to live a life that, ensures their tomorrow is settled for them, and that has to come from, I remember listening to a tape at a point, and the person preaching in that tape was talking about the original Hebrew meaning of the word father. The word father is the word nourisher and sustainer. in Hebrew, often used in the scriptures in the Bible. And when we understand that we are supposed to be nourishers and sustainers, we realize that our role is not just to be the head of the family. In fact, a father is actually not the head of the family. The father is the foundation of the family.
Yeah,
That's the way. Yeah, that's the way he talked about it, and he talked about, if you're a foundation, if you're the sort of like the soil, you are the one that everyone grows on. You are the one that everyone sort of like steps on, for them to attain their heights and get nourishment from, and get their sustenance from. And I think that was what my dad exemplified, to us while we were growing up, and that's one of the things I want to exemplify to my children growing up as well too. Being a sustainer and a nourisher.
Yeah, it's powerful. And I know that when me and you spoke last time, I think I wrote down our conversation into sort of 3 buckets about, your father's sacrifice, adversity around your PhD, which we'll come on to in a second.
Yes,
and
yes.
the third one was
Yeah.
sort of, a decision to help people. So maybe I'm going to let you talk about New Zealand now, your new home, but maybe talk about the adversity that you had to fight through in your own life, because like I said, I would love to, my wife, if she listens to this podcast, is going to say, no, Simon, you're committing more financial expense, but I would love to try and get, a sort of doctorate. That would be a personal goal of mine. But you started to do that age 23, and I know it wasn't an easy path. So maybe sort of talk to us about that process as to what happened.
So when I finished my master's in Singapore, I was going to just do my PhD in Singapore, and I could have done that PhD in Singapore at that particular point in time. But the challenge was, I had my master's supervisor called me up and said, Samuel, I know you want to do a PhD here in Singapore, but I'm afraid I don't think you should do it here in Singapore. There aren't many opportunities for you if you finish here. So that was where it began, so to speak. I was like, so where do I go? And he said, oh, why not go to Australia? That Australia was what he mentioned. And I started to have Australia in my mind. But around about that time, someone called my dad from nowhere. We had no idea, and the number was +64. +64. So my dad asked me to go Google what country code was +64. So I Googled it, and it was New Zealand. That was literally my own first time of hearing New Zealand. Of course, Dad had it before. He loves geography and all. And it was like, oh, New Zealand. And we don't know anybody in New Zealand, and we just closed the case. Hopefully the person will call back or something like that.
Yeah.
And then later the person called back. It was one of my dad's friends who was living in South Korea before and had moved to New Zealand. The man still stays in New Zealand till today, and it was the one that called. And then he came to Singapore, came to preach for my dad and all of that. And one day my dad just came out. It was one early evening. Came out of his room and said, Samuel, God just spoke to me that you're going to New Zealand. And of course, I'm not shocked though, because that's how Dad speaks. He's a pastor, is a man of God, and many times things get revealed to him like that, and he will just say it, and so he said, oh, you're going to New Zealand. God spoke to me that you are going to New Zealand. And then he said, Daddy, what did you see? What happened? And then he said, I had a dream, and I saw you in New Zealand with your wife. So at that time I was still dating my wife. We met online, a story for another day. We met online, and we hadn't even met physically. All right. So all I showed my dad were pictures, and all
he knew just for those pictures.
Yeah. So he said in his dream he actually saw me, and the lady I always show him in the picture.
Wow.
He saw the both of us, and he saw us carrying a baby boy. So, and he said that we were so celebrated in New Zealand, in the dream when he came. So he came and he said, he's sort of like the way we were celebrated, that's the same way he was received, and then he got that, and the dream cut off. And then he came and said, you're going to New Zealand, you're going to do your PhD in New Zealand. Forget about Australia, forget about Canada, forget about the United States, because those were some of the places I was applying to then. And then that helped me. That gave me singleness of heart and focus. And I started to apply to New Zealand. And, to cut the long story short, I got admission at Victoria University of Wellington. I was buzzing. I was excited. Yeah. I was just a 23-year-old student. I just finished my master's from Nanyang Technological University, one of the top 100 universities in the world. I was excited in my spirit. And then I came to New Zealand. I met my supervisor for the first time, and He received me quite well. Everything was going rosy. He actually literally showed me up throughout the mountains around Wellington in New Zealand, Mount Victoria. Showed me some nice places. Drove me around. I thought I was in for a very good time, and I thought I was for the first 6 months. All of a sudden, 6 months into the program, the very same man that came to receive me and took me around and all of that just stopped liking me. And I had two supervisors at that time. I had a primary supervisor, I had a secondary supervisor. The primary supervisor was more senior in rank. He was a full professor. And my primary supervisor was not a full professor. My primary supervisor was just a PhD holder. My second supervisor, which was my secondary supervisor, was a full professor. So there was always this debate between the two of them, always arguing the direction with which they would lead me and all of that. And I was always like the elephant, the grass between two elephants fighting whenever they started to argue about their philosophies and and stuff. And when they stopped liking me, they would say things like, "You're too young to do a PhD. You can't produce a high quality PhD thesis." After a while, I met with the PhD committee and told them what I've been hearing, and the PhD committee said, "Okay, why don't you do a course?" A research methods course, and if you can take this course and pass the course with at least a B plus grade, then you would advance and continue doing your PhD. If you don't, then we will terminate your PhD. Just before that, I had complained about my supervisors always arguing and always making me the grass between two elephants fighting and all. So what they did was they changed my supervisor, right? They changed. Okay. They gave me a new supervisor. Oh, and I thought, oh yes, I've broken free. I should be fine now. What I didn't know was that, all of them were very good friends and all. So it didn't last very long. But I was told to do that course. Guess who was my course coordinator? The very professor that didn't really like me too much after a while, at that time. He was my course coordinator. And I remember I did the course to the best of my knowledge. Literally, I helped other students pass the course. Okay. I proofread their work and critique their work, and I'm not talking about one student. I'm talking about like 2 or 3 others, all right, from English speaking countries. And then this was me when the results came out. I was called into the office of the professor, my former second supervisor, who was the course coordinator for that course, and he called me and said, "Samuel, for this course, I could have given you a B. I could give you a B plus or a B. Remember, what I needed was a B plus." Okay. And I told him, I said, "Yeah, if you could give me a B plus, go ahead."
That'd be nice.
Yeah, exactly. Give it to me. But he said, "No, I'm going to give you a B." I was like, "What? Why? If I get a B, I'm not going to be able to make it." And he goes, "Yeah, because you're too young. You're too young to do a PhD. You still have a lot to learn. When I was your age and I was given a scholarship at the university of this and that, I rejected it. I decided I was going to get some experience." And he said all of that. I was just weeping right in front of him. I was begging, I was weeping, I was, and all of that. By the time the official result came out, he gave me a B. And I was the PhD committee met again and they terminated my PhD admission. I thought it was over for me. Literally, I thought it was over. I thought my dream was crashing. In fact, just before that, a few months before that, I had a dream. And that dream, I saw myself in a helicopter with the pastor of the church I was attending at that time, Pastor John Cameron, of Arise Church in Wellington, New Zealand. And the two of us were in the helicopter. And as we were traveling, right, in the helicopter, there was this massive storm. And all of a sudden, the helicopter crashed in front of a big hall, like a massive hall. And there were so many people in the hall, like literally it was as though they were waiting for us in the hall. And as soon as we came out of the helicopter unscathed, that's why the fact that it crashed, all right, we came out of the helicopter unscathed, we went straight into the hall. And it was like we were being led to the front of the hall. And we stood on a podium, the two of us. They gave us microphones and we started to speak. And as we started to speak, a lot of people were clapping. I saw a lot of people clapping. And the dream finished and ended. So I was confused about the dream, and I called my dad. I remember I told you how my dad is a clergyman, and he's the usual person that I would call for such. Dad, I said I had this dream, but I don't know the meaning. And then I think it took some hours, and then he called me back and said, "I've prayed about it, and this is the meaning. The meaning is that your PhD is going to crash. The helicopter is your PhD. It's going to crash, but God has a bigger purpose for you in New Zealand. You are going to be a speaker, you are going to preach, and millions will gather at the sound of your voice. That was what he said. And I was like, wow, okay. But then, the PhD hadn't crashed, right?
Yeah.
So it didn't make sense.
But you had at that point, though, when the committee did meet, they gave you a termination letter, and basically, you were starting to pack your bags and
that was after.
That was after the dream. Yeah.
After the dream. So yeah.
No, I was going to say. So when you had that termination letter, you said, that you were, your dreams had been, had crashed.
It was like my dreams were shattered and all. And I was just sort of like consoling myself. I remember I would cry almost every single day. And one day I was just making tea in the kitchen of the PhD students area lounge, so to speak. So they hadn't offered me the termination letter yet. They had signed it off. I was just supposed to receive it. I think I had about 1 or 2 more weeks to pack my belongings, and then they told immigration. The whole thing was a process. So I was just still there, just my last days, so to speak. And I was making tea that day, and one of my colleagues came to me and said, "Samuel, would you like to go to Auckland, with my supervisor?" I'm like, sure. I mean,
I'm about to get a plane back to Nigeria, so why not?
Why not? And I was like, oh, if you're interested, let me know. Of course I'm interested. I don't even need to think about it. And then next day he called me and said, oh, my supervisor wants to see you. Okay. So we went there, and the supervisor said, oh, I've just got an appointment to Auckland University of Technology. I was wondering if you want to come along. Oh, absolutely. I want to come along. And then we started to talk, and he literally worked out my transfer. I call it a transfer because I literally started where I stopped. I did not start from the beginning. I started where I stopped. He literally told Auckland University of Wellington that I'm transferring with him from Victoria. Sorry, he told Auckland University of Technology that I was transferring with him from Victoria University of Wellington. So literally those people took me as one of his students that he was bringing along with him from the other school to their school.
And wasn't there something in there, Sammy, that they said that what they needed to admit you was a termination letter?
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting there.
I'm getting excited. You're piping me up for it.
I'm getting there, and and he told them and said, "Oh, he's one of my students." And he told me not to say a word, so I didn't say a single word. He did all of that. He answered all the questions and all. And by the time they called me, they called me and said, "Oh, hi Samuel, we've spoken to your supervisor. We understand that you're moving with him from Wellington to Auckland. Congratulations, no problem. However, this offer letter is predicated or is conditioned upon you providing a termination letter from Victoria University of Wellington." I told the lady that called me, I said, do you want it now? I couldn't see her face. I'm sure she must have been shocked. Like, who gets a termination letter before they get an offer letter? But I'm sure she didn't know my situation. But that was it. And then I saw the same termination letter that was meant to terminate my dreams was the same letter that I needed to actually enter into another realm of that dream. And it was really powerful for me. It really, really made me very grateful. Very grateful to the supervisor that I ended up finishing with, Professor William Wang. Is still here in New Zealand till today. Very awesome, wonderful man. And I learned so much from him. Guess what? Throughout the whole trying period, he was watching. He was watching all along. He saw the entire injustice, saw everything. He never said a word. And it's amazing how many people are just looking at us, in our afflictions and seeing, and they're watching our attitude. They're looking at the things, how we're responding, and that could determine whether they're going to, help us, or whether, they're going to say something or do something, about it. And that was literally how my dream, how I didn't lose my dream.
Thank you for joining us for the Who I Became podcast. If you are enjoying the discussions between Simon and his guests, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review, as well as share with your friends on social media. Once again, thank you for joining the Who I Became podcast.